the question is the Harley Davidson FXR overrated? Let's check it out. Okay, what's going on YouTube? FXDLSBROOKLYN is back in the building. Coming at you from a Saturday, riding with your girl Jenny. I don't know if you can see her in the rear view, but we are enjoying a nice little Saturday ride. And I figured, you know, ever since I started dropping content on my FXR, a common question that I've been getting for people who maybe come across a deal that they think is good, and they're thinking about maybe picking up an FXR as like a second bike. I don't know too many people who are thinking about picking up one as a first bike, which I actually do think this could be a potentially really good first bike, but that's probably a separate video. But a common question I've been getting asked is, hey, FXDLSBROOKLYN, we see you've been putting down a lot of FXR miles in the last year. There is certainly some serious hype around the Harley Davidson FXR still. And they're asking me, should I believe the hype? As Public Enemy would say. Is the bike overrated or is it underrated? And that's a really good question, because again, there is a lot of hype, and personally, you know, it's a rarer bike. Even though you see them a lot on Instagram, in terms of people that I know that ride, most people I know and most friends that I have are not riding FXRs. You know, so when you do see them, it's kind of like a special and unique thing, you know, so which is probably why there's some hype around it, and also why there's a lot of questions around it, just because, you know, in terms of people that you know, you probably don't know that many people that are on FXRs. I mean, yeah, you definitely know some people, right, but it's not the majority. So is it overrated, right, after a year of riding this bike? And honestly, what I'm going to say is for my particular riding style, and in terms of how this bike fits me, I'm going to say it's actually underrated, right? It's really interesting, because like there is some hype around it, but in terms of my YouTube channel and in terms of any content I post on Instagram, numbers and reaction-wise, most of my followers and subscribers do not really want to see FXR content. They're more excited about Dyna content, you know, lowrider content, FXRT fairing content. That's kind of what's been the more popular stuff that I've dropped within the past year, right? So, yeah, I think it's underrated, and I think in terms of the hype around the FXR, I think it's justifiably so, and I think this bike has earned that hype. I absolutely love this bike, and I've said it before in other videos, I've never sat on another Harley Davidson that has quite fit me as well as this bike fits me. When you ride this bike, like, you are truly riding in the pocket, you are truly in the bike. And any other Harley I've been on, I kind of feel like I'm more on the bike. But this one in particular, like, you really do feel like you are in the bike, you and the bike are one. Isn't that nice? See, there we go. Now, as much torque, as much horsepower as my Dyna, not even close, right? But enough torque and enough horsepower for highway miles, for city riding, for upstate riding, for touring, absolutely. So the reason why I think the FXR is kind of underrated is I feel like a lot of people kind of treat the FXR in a way that I've kind of treated it, where it's like, alright, it's my second bike, it's a bike that I'm going to ride around town, you know. But I know a lot of people where the FXR is their main bike, right? An example is Retro Jones, right? His 93 FXR PE, that is his main bike, you know, and he does all sorts of riding with that bike. He's taking it to Florida, he's taking it upstate, all over the place, you know, and that's his main, right? I don't think these bikes need to be compartmentalized into being a side bike or a get around town bike. I think if I wanted this bike and something happened to my Dynas, this would easily be my main bike, you know, and I'd be happy to say that, because in the year that I've had it, this bike has been reliable. Yeah, it's definitely had its leaks, it definitely has had its kinks that still need to be worked out, right? But in terms of when I go and I plan to ride this bike, it always starts, you know, and I always make it back home. It's never had like a serious breakdown. In terms of it being overrated, right? In terms of like buying a new FXR itself, like I don't know if I'd be throwing down any more than, I don't know if I'd be throwing down any more than like 7K, 6K, 5K, depending on the condition and the miles of the bike. I don't think, you know, I think you'd be kind of crazy to throw down something in the range of 10 grand. You know, at that point, you know, I would probably just steer someone to go get a new Lowrider S or something, you know, which, yeah. Get something that's not like 3 decades old at this point, or whatever it is. I can't do math right now. But yeah, so I mean, there is some hype around it, but I just think like a lot of people have not actually hopped on one of these and ridden it, because I feel like if more people, and it's not easy to do that, like you need to know someone who has one. You can't just go into a dealership and test ride a bike that hasn't been made for a couple decades, right? But I do kind of feel like if more people got to actually hop on these bikes and maybe spend a day with it in different conditions, being like, hey, do your urban miles, do your suburban miles, do your highway miles, do your twisties, I feel like the amount of FXRs that you'd be seeing on the road would match the hype around it. But in terms of like, do I think, again, overrated or underrated? I think it's underrated. And like, I think if you are curious about it and you found a good deal and the bike looks like it runs right, obviously if you know the person selling it and you have that type of relationship, I would say if you have the opportunity to ride it first, by all means do so. But I think at the end of the day, with all the hype, the Harley-Davidson FXR is still an underrated bike. And I don't know, like within my circle, you know, in the little Dyna bro bubble, you know, obviously I know a good amount of people that have them, and I see a good amount of them if I'm going to XYZ bike event, right? But in terms of like an everyday ride like I'm doing, I'm probably not going to see another FXR on the road, right? And I don't know. I know it's tough with supply and demand, as they do not make this bike anymore. But like I said, I think if you're someone where it's your dream bike, or you think it's going to be a good bike for you, I guess my takeaway is it can 100% be your main bike. And is it overrated? Nah. I think like the hype around this bike is certainly real. There's really no other Harley-Davidson that's gonna fit and sit and ride like this particular bike does. And anyone who either owns an FXR or who has ridden an FXR, I'm sure is probably gonna agree with me to at least some extent on that. So yeah, you're catching me at a moment where I'm definitely getting more and more attached to this particular bike, right? If you are not liking the FXR content, I'm sorry. I'll also try to mix and match this with Dyna content as well. But as always, you know, let me know what you all think in the comments. You know, there's definitely some real hype around it. Whether you've ridden one, or whether you own one, or whether you haven't, let me know in the comment section. Do you think the bike is overrated or underrated? I would love to hear what you all think. But on that, we're going to continue our beautiful ride on the North Shore of Long Island. As always, stay safe out there, stay low, ride Dynas, ride FXRs, just make sure that you do ride. And on that, FXDLSBROOKLYN is out.